Hi again, I'm Mark, welcome back to Three Bridges, my update from the loft layout I'm building. So it's last week of June, just before the holiday season gets going in earnest. So I'm on the last section of the second deck, so the last open framework bit I'll show you. So to get around the loft I have to make 14 open framework block sections, and I'm on to this last one, 7. So given that 8 and 6 are in place, I've been able to measure up what it needs to be. So that's the dimensions: 1605 minus 36, so 1570, and then I'm going to make it 60D, which is just inside the roof struts coming down, so that gives me plenty of space to do what I want and easily reachable in to. So I've ripped the long strips, so I need about 2.5 to make a open framework. So I'll get 2 of the long lengths, and then I'll get the ends out of this part of it, and then I'll just need a couple of sections out of the last one to do the bracings across. So I'll do 2 of those. So I'll cut the lengths up. So the ends are 600, so I'll just eyeball it with the circular saw for the first one, and then I'll put a stop in place at the other end, and then they'll all be cut to the same length. So I just position up the first one, power off obviously, so that's the 600, so I can now set up my stop at the end. So first one cut. So being the first one, I always just do a double check. As I say, measure twice, cut once. So the 2 ends and front and back are cut to length. So the only thing I've got to do now is the cross struts. So what I do is a simple, it's not really a trick, it's just logical. I'll put this one in place, again up against the end stop, and then what I'll do is I'll pack it out with 2 of those. So that will effectively shorten this one by the width of the front and the back, so that I know that this cross strut will sit perfectly inside the frame, and I don't need to measure anything, I just position it and cut it. So that's all 6 pieces of wood cut. So the cross struts need some holes through for the wiring. Doesn't really matter where they go. I know that there's a couple of tracks at the front and there's a couple of tracks at the back, so I'll just roughly eyeball those and drill them through. But the ends need to, the holes here need to marry up with the holes of the panels in the roof that these are going to attach to. So I'll take these up to the loft, mark up where the holes, the existing holes are, so that I can pop them through so that they tie up, and then there's about 16 or 17 holes to drill. Right, back in the loft. So this is the left side. Definitely at this point is to mark everything up as to if it's left or right, up, down, front, back, because the number of times I have drilled a hole and then put the piece up, and then discovered it's upside down, back to front, and the wrong side. So those are the 4 holes I'm going to replicate. The last one, yeah, it gets blocked off. I won't worry about that one. Then get everything through with the 4 holes. So I just need to remember that the piece I'm putting up needs to be shimmed at the back, because obviously the cross strut sits from there across. Well, I just made a mistake there. So I said shim it at the back, but actually this is an end piece, so the end piece sits up against the wall, because the framework is now gone through 90 degrees. So remove the shim and redraw the holes. So to do all my holes for the wiring to go through the open framework, I use a 20mm paddle drill Maybe there's another name for it. I always call it a paddle drill. So these are the cheapest, nastiest drills known to man, but for this purpose they do the job very quickly. So the only tip I have is to prevent excessive tear out. I'll drill through sort of about halfway from one side, and it leaves a little pilot hole on the other side, and then drill through from the other side so that the cutting point where the two halves is in the middle, and it just leaves a little bit of a burr that a sander will take off. But if I was to try and go all the way through with the plywood, it will just tear and looks really horrible. Okay, next step, assemble the frame. So I don't worry too much about making this, perfectly right angled joints. I use these cheap little picture frame clamps. They roughly do it. There is quite a bit of give in the frame. Okay, it's not 100% rigid, and that's fine because I need it to just move a little bit in the loft anyway when I'm positioning it. So, and once it's bolted in place, it will be fine. So you don't need to get hung up on making sure every joint is perfectly square. Okay, so it's easier to just do all the drilling for the screws pre, so I've got to countersink the ends because that's going to butt up against another piece of wood. So I'll do the countersink, still do the hole, assemble the frame, drill again so that I've got a pilot hole into the main strut, so that when I put the screw through it doesn't split this thing open, because you're going into the weakest part of the wood and it wants to delaminate. When you're doing the cross struts, obviously you're going again into the ends of the cross struts through right angles to the front and back, so they will hold, but this thing is again going to want to delaminate. If it does delaminate, the quick fix is to stick another piece of wood on there, go into that one, and then bolt that one to that one. So there is a fix if you start to delaminate the plywood. The plywood we get at the moment, it's not brilliant. So I've had some sheets. The other sheet I had delaminated quite a lot. The price of this stuff used to be about £47 for a 240 by 120 sheet. It's come down to £37. Either the building industry has suddenly cut its costs, or they found a cheaper source from China. This sheet though that I'm currently working on, nothing's delaminated yet, so I think it's just luck of the draw. Okay, I appreciate not everybody wants to keep buying more tools for the woodworking on the grounds of would I ever use it a lot. So because I'm making so many frameworks, getting 4 of these made sense. I think they were 12 quid on Amazon. You can make your own, so it's just as long as you know that's a right angle, drill 4 holes. Doesn't really matter where the holes are, that's not important. These are the cheap clamps that you can get at Lidl. So and basically just clamp them through and hold the other strut, so that strut would effectively sit like that. And so as long as you know that that is a perfect right angle, and of course measure it up with your set square, then here's some cheek clamps. So positioning of the cross struts and the ends really is going to affect where your points are going to be. I know I'm not having any points in this section, so it doesn't really matter, so I'll just pop them in evenly. So last job, just paint the front black. I'll get that done. Can't really blame the dog, because she keeps dropping a ball for me to throw. And I wasn't paying attention. So like I set up in the loft, mark everything out. I put this one on the right way up, but the wrong way around. So I'll just undo it and reposition it. So I'll leave that to dry, and then we'll get it up in the loft and I can show you how to install them. Right, up in the loft, and it's, I suppose it's about 25 up here, so it's comfortable. Okay, so I need to get that piece in here. I know I can get it through this gap at an angle, but I need to support it whilst I then bolt it through. So the way I do it, because it's just me, I haven't got a third extra long limb to hold the other end that is 1.8 meters away. So I've got two offcuts of, I don't know what that is, 1/2 by 2 with a couple of screws in it. And they just get screwed underneath. You don't need to go mad. It's not going to take a lot of weight. It's just enough that it just creates a ledge that I can drop this next home framework onto. So one at each end. So as always, it's a bit of a geometrical puzzle to get one of these through the gap so you can drop it down, and it won't go. And I know from the other end it won't go because the roofs are coming in, and because I'm moving slowly higher up the loft, I don't have as much height above given the depth I've got. So the quick solution is to remove this top one, and then that will allow me to slot it in through there up to here, put it back, reattach the end and drop it in place. It took a couple of minutes, but we're in. So it's a good point to make at this point. I don't glue anything with my frameworks. You could, I know a lot of people do glue and screw just for extra rigidity. I took a decision very early on not to glue anything, because I always knew that I would end up having to dismantle it at some point, and if it's glued, it's a lot harder to dismantle or move things around or change it. You know, I could decide that I did want to have a point here. Well, it's not the end of the world to move something around. If I wanted to move this with a lot more freedom, I could have open pockets from this side, so it would be easier to get underneath and move the strut. Right, so the last thing to do is just to bolt through. So similar to here, I use these, I think they're 8mm or 6mm bolts. They're usually 100mm long. So these two things are aligned effectively because they're sitting on the support. They should be, but you can just, it's like a millimetre tweak, and then I'll just hand drill through, put the bolt in, drill the other one, put the bolt in, and then I can drop the support off and do the same at that end. And if I put everything right. So what next? So I've ummed and ahed about this one for several weeks now. So this is episode 99. There'll be another one in a few days' time, maybe towards the end of next week, the 100th, where I'll give you the update on where I've got to with DERF. So with the hot weather, obviously I did a lot more finishing that sort of wooden wall between the DERF line and the West Coast line. For the loft, there's still lots to do, as always. So this is, we plan to be here for 10 years. Roughly we're just over 2.5 years, so by about a month. So yeah, a quarter of the time in the house, which is shot by. In terms of building the layout, 3 decks obviously, and I sort of allowed a couple of years for each deck, and then this year I sort of gave myself a bit of extra time on the lower level, but I've managed to get the framework for the next deck in. So I sort of feel I'm on target still, and there's still a lot to finish off on the lower deck, but I can just do that when I want to, because you know the trains run is just scenics, and so if I fancy doing it, I do it. I'm not sort of being precious about I have to finish everything on the lower deck level before I move up to the second deck. But I am suffering from YouTube burnout. I will probably admit to that one. So loving the hobby, but I just don't really get an awful lot out of doing the videos. In terms of, it obviously tells me where I got to. I think typically there's about 15 people who like the video. So and Colin from Moss End is about the most vocal person in supporting me, and I've always really appreciated that, Colin. So there will be other videos coming this year, but just not as frequently. So I'm going to take a 2-month break. I will probably record some of the stuff I do in that time, but I'm not going to load anything up. It literally is, you know, 15 people who might miss some content. 75% of the people who click on the channel don't even subscribe to the channel, so I'm not really worried about upsetting a load of people, and been knocking on 700 subscribers for best part of 6 months now. So in that sense, again, it's not like I've got thousands of followers and I'm going to upset a load of people. So I will crack on, and hopefully next time I see you in person, I'll have something more to present on what I've done over the summer. So have a great summer, and I'll catch you in a couple of months' time. Cheers.